We're here to talk about the care team operations as well as how we can help you all out with our students. This is certainly a very weird time for all of us, and so we're going to be here to help you through all of this. When it comes to myself, I'm Tim Kaysen. So for those that I have not met, I'm the Director of Student Conduct and Prevention Education, and within that role, I do oversee our care team here for the Trinity River as well as our Connect campus. I also serve as our Chief Conduct Officer, Deputy Title IX Coordinator, which deals with sexual misconduct, and then I also administer the Eliminating Barriers Fund, which is our emergency grant program on within the district for students who encourage or encounter financial emergencies. I'll let you introduce yourself, Geronimo.
And good afternoon. My name is Geronimo. I work as the Assistant Director of Advising and Counseling at the Trinity River, and I serve within the care team.
Yes, Geronimo keeps me sane, and so he'll be here to help out today. Like I said, we're going to go over what the care team is, how we can help you. We want to also talk a little bit about identifying roadblocks. So first off, what might be something that prevents you from reporting if you do have a report to make? And then figure out what are ways that we can help overcome some of those roadblocks, whether in this presentation or after, to make sure that we know how to support our students and then those impacted by these types of referrals. And so we'll distinguish between those different types of behaviors and provide some guidance on how you can react, as well as then follow up with some of the things that we try to do as a campus community to foster an atmosphere of care. So like I said, it is engaging. Make sure that your mic's on mute unless you want to just jump in and ask a question. You are also welcome to utilize the chat feature and ask those questions, and we'll make sure to take those as they come in. So first and foremost, care team. Yes, it is a very great acronym because we care about people, and what we can do to help them out. But it does also actually mean something. So it stands for consult, assessment, resources, as well as education. And so our whole goal is to assess concerns regarding safety and the well-being of our students and make sure that we draw upon the professional experience that we have within our campus community to provide a unbiased, equitable referral process in terms of the emotional, psychological, physical support that they may need, and then get those individuals connected to the resources to help them deal with whatever's going on, so then they can continue on in their educational journey. On top of all that, we want to make sure we're doing and creating educational opportunities like this for you all so that you can understand a little bit more about what we do and kind of peel back the curtain. In terms of our philosophy, a little bit of a history lesson too is care teams were kind of started on college campuses as what were known as behavioral intervention teams. And so you may hear us refer to a BIT or a behavioral intervention team. And it all started right around 2007 when there was the massacre at Virginia Tech, when the individual perpetrated just a mass casualties were murdered, and there was an entire investigation to determine what happened in that situation. And the report that came out from the government at that time said the school's behavioral intervention team, or BIT, should have been aware of this student and some of the concerns and done what was reasonably expected of them to intervene and try and prevent. We can't prevent everything, but we can definitely do our due diligence to track and try. And Virginia Tech's response was, what is a behavioral intervention team? It just wasn't a super common practice at that time in the college setting. It was mostly utilized for crime assessment, FBI tactics, Secret Service, things of that nature. And so from there on, it really took a life of its own and has grown and expanded to now where there are behavioral intervention teams in private workspaces, in public spaces like this. There are teams that focus on not only students, but employees. And then also it's gone into the K through 12 entities and groups as well. And the whole goal is to provide a proactive prevention strategy when there are behavioral concerns with students, and then figure out what we can do to assist those students as well as the campus community when they're in distress while maintaining consistent communication between departments. Because one of the hallmark issues of the Virginia Tech massacre was that that student who perpetrated those acts, he was engaging in some concerning behaviors all across campus within his residence hall, within his academic advisor, his student organizations, and so on. But none of those groups were coming together and talking about those collectively so they can figure out a unified approach. Everyone was seeing small pieces and trying to plan for that small piece versus taking a look at the whole picture. So that's our philosophy and our goal. When it comes to functions, it translates out into these 6 action steps. And I know that this display looks a little chaotic, and that's kind of the purpose, is while these situations and these referrals can often seem chaotic and the student may appear to be in a chaotic state, there is a path through that we can intervene and provide support. So we're going to do what we can. So first, gather and assess all information about an individual who may be exhibiting concerning signs. They may be in distress or are potentially threatening themselves or others, by then going through and looking at that information and doing a national threat assessment on them. It's based off national best practice. We'll show you an example of that later, to then develop an action plan and connect that individual at number 4 with resources to support and provide advice also to those impacted. And then finally, of course, we want to educate and empower our campus community to keep it safe and also to act and not be just an innocent bystander, but to be an active bystander and own their portion of keeping this campus safe. Geronimo, is there anything that you want to add so far? I know I've just been kind of going through this already.
No, you're good.
Okay, perfect. And I don't see any questions in the chat right now, but I'll open it up and pause for a second. Are there any questions? All right, well, we'll keep moving. When it comes to the composition of the care team, it can look a little different based off of the campus specific needs, but each of our campuses does have a dedicated team member besides Connect, and that's because Connect and Trinity River have partnered together. And so we here at Trinity River manage both campuses while the other campuses just manage their specific referrals and their specific students. But they are all managed within the same database, and so we're constantly connecting and seeing what our students are doing at the other campuses as well, because as you all may be well aware, some of our students are enrolled at 3, 4, 5 campuses in one given semester, and so we work really closely with our other care teams as well to figure out how do we work as a district, not just an individual campus unit. But the teams are comprised of the Student Conduct and Prevention Education Director serves as the co-chair with the Vice President for Student Development Services there at the top. The director also is the case manager, so making sure the nuts and bolts get taken care of, as well as all of the notes and things of that nature. Our coordinator for student accessibility resources will be present on each campus, as well as someone from the police department on that group. For Trinity River specifically, we actually have 2 police officers on our team, and that's because we believe that it's very important to have representation from both what some may call our main campus, so Trinity River right here, and then also our East Campus where a lot of our healthcare programs are housed. And so we have police representation from both locations. And then we also have ANC, advising and counseling. Some teams only have the director of counseling, some teams only have the assistant director. We have both the director and the assistant director from advising and counseling on our team. There's also representation from student development services. Sometimes that'll be the coordinator of student activities or the director of student development services, as well as potentially health services on the team. We currently just have our director of student development services for TR and Connect. And then AA, we always have an academic affairs representative on ours. And so right now, currently, Dr. Ume from our Dean of Nursing program, he is serving on our team as well. So if you want, go ahead and grab your devices or pull out a second window on your laptops that you're on. You can do this on your phone pretty easy, but you'll visit this URL here. And it's pollev.com/timcason419. So if you'll visit that URL, and if someone wants to just put in the chat, like once I hear from 1 or 2 people that they got it pulled up, we can advance. and it should come up with an option that asks you why might someone not submit a care team report. And you'll see the URL is still up there at the very top. You can also text to that location there, but if you just want to go ahead and start sending your responses in. So why might someone not submit a care team report? Let's just get a couple of pieces of feedback, and we want them displayed on one screen so we can see them together, and then we'll talk about them. So I see a couple. One says they feel like they are betraying the student. Another one says that they're not wanting to get involved or take additional time out of their schedule. Both very, very realistic concerns and roadblocks potentially to reporting. What are some other things maybe? And Geronimo, if you want to jump in as well and share some other reasons why someone might not want to get involved. Yep, wouldn't want to break the student's trust. Retaliation's one, yeah. So these are all things that we definitely see coming up sometimes when it comes to reporting students. And one thing that I will kind of highlight here, and hopefully when we walk through this presentation, we'll be able to address some of these concerns. But if we don't, definitely bring it back up to us so we can address it. But retaliation is a definite concern that we're going to talk about a little bit. We'll talk about breaking the student's trust as well as not wanting to get involved or take out time of the schedule. Anything that you want to add right now, Geronimo?
Sometimes they're afraid of liability. They're concerned that if they report, they'll be liable for legal reasons. There's a myth about that.
Yeah. Do you want to unpack that now or later?
Let's do it later as we move forward to the practical part.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you all for that. We'll move to the next one. So when looking at the levels of behavior that we're going to deal with, we break them into 3 different categories. So if you think of like a stoplight, you know, red, yellow, red, or green, yellow, red, excuse me, it's our concerning behaviors, which are most low level referrals that we're going to get, and then disruptions right in the middle there, and then threatening is that very top of the pyramid, and it is definitely the smallest portion. And we purposely distributed the colors in this way to show that the majority of the referrals that we're going to get are in relation to concerning behaviors. So a student might, which we'll walk through what that is defined as in a little bit. After that, there's another portion of disruptive behaviors. It's a lot smaller though, and then the absolute smallest is threatening. And the reason that the idea or the image of a pyramid is important is because we can't get to a threatening behavior without a student also having displayed some form of disruption or concerning behavior down the road. These things don't happen in isolation. Typically, I will say statistically, this is not a light switch, and it's a very, very, very small percentage of people that just wake up, flip a switch, and they are at that threatening level. There is what we call leakage along the way. So leakage is different behavioral indicators that there is something going on that we can intervene in. TCC and TR specifically are phenomenal at reporting. We have a very, very high report culture, which is great, which means we're able to intervene early and often at that concerning level before it elevates. So we're going to walk through each of those levels now. And we define concerning behavior as something that causes us to feel alarmed, upset, or worried for a person's well-being. So that's that lowest level of stuff. If y'all want to maybe turn off your mic or turn your mics on and share with us what might be an example of something that would be a concerning behavior.
This is Nick Nazafati from Southeast Campus. A
Hello.
threat situation would be probably somebody do a threat to your safety or put you in a situation that you feel endangered because of the verbiage they use, like I'm going to seek you out your address and come and talk to you in person. I mean, this is not something you like to hear from online student.
Yeah, that's definitely something that would cause probably a significant amount of concern. And when it gets to that level, I would almost argue that that's definitely more elevated at that very, very high point. But yeah.
Tim, if you can go back to the previous, the three disruptive. So think about those three as an escalation, like he was saying, and think about two levels, two dimensions of the students that you're seeing. One is the level of functioning, how functional they are in terms of reality, and the other one is boundaries, how much they overstep the boundaries of normal expected interaction, right? Concerning, for example, a student who is being raising their voice. Normally, it's not something that you be or begins to swear. That may be something that brings concerned behavior in themselves, compared to a student who is making claims that will harm somebody else, that will go beyond disruptive and goes more into threatening behavior in terms of boundaries. Same with levels of functioning. Concerning behavior may be a student who begins to show up late to class continually, or their hygiene begins to be deteriorating. We will not see this now that we're online, but normally we'll be in classroom. To compare to threatening behavior, which is a student who is talking about people following him or her and feel that people are against them.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. So when we think about concerning behaviors, I think that those are some great examples that you provided, Geronimo. And thinking about it too, although the majority of our classes are going to be online this year, we still do have a few of our classes that are going to be occurring in person. And so definitely want to make sure that you're all aware of both some things that you may see in the online context as well as in person, down the road once we get to a situation where we are back in person. So think about situations where maybe there's a student who has an inability to get along with other people, or they are moody, they're irritable, they're isolated, they may experience or show poor personal hygiene. If they're excessively tardy or absent from your class, that might be cause for concern, or having maybe a significant change in their academic work. These are things that you're definitely going to see when you are interacting with your students who are, having sporadic attendance or things of that nature. So leakage or these types of behaviors are often indicators that there are other greater things going on with the student. Yep, how will you identify these problems if you're teaching from home? So I know that some instructors are going to be hosting specific hours in which they'll be hosting live lectures. And so if the students are frequently coming into those live lectures and are not completing their assignments in a super timely fashion, or if they were completing them a ton on time and then there's a sudden change in their attendance, it's all those types of things that we're going to see. So our risk ratings aren't going to change, but the way that we see these behaviors may come up in different areas. Or honestly, students might not really come outright and say like, I haven't completed my assignments because I am currently homeless and I don't have internet access or what have you. So it's going to look a little different. Or you may have a student reach out to you and say like, hey, I just don't want to work with anybody. I don't get along with anybody, or contacting you and saying my group's the worst. And some of that will be classroom management. Some of that will be coaching the student, but some of it also might be an indicator of a greater issue. Geronimo, is there anything that you wanted to add?
I think that it is a good opportunity when students make comments regarding other students or about the classroom the first thing would be to explore. If they say, I feel that I'm being mistreated or other students are not allowing me or this is unfair, it would be a good opportunity to ask them, what do you mean with that? How do you feel? What behavior? So that allows the student to explore their own ideas, and it allows you to have a better understanding where they're coming from.
Absolutely. Yeah, and so that's a good segue into the other interventions that we're potentially looking at here is I kind of look at concerning behavior as like, oh, this feels weird or this feels funny, but maybe we don't have all the answers right away. And so we're not 100% sure about what's going on. And so initiating in a private, non-confrontational conversation with that student is going to be one of the best things that you can do. And just highlight what you're observing, highlighting those areas of concern with the student and kind of see where the conversation goes. No one's asking you to be an expert on how to respond to every single thing, but we have to at least try to get some more information about what's going on first before we know how to assist them. And so a lot of you may utilize emails. There's also like those attendance alerts. I really encourage you all, if there's students who, you know, after the first day or two of class haven't even logged in to Blackboard, to definitely send a personalized email to them through Outlook and asking them about what's going on, how can I help, I see you haven't accessed it, because then you're highlighting specifically for them, here's my area of concern, I want to make sure everything's okay and that you're equipped to move forward. Like I said, a lot of what we see here are going to be like basic needs insecurities or inability to adjust to certain environments. And so just looking for options to connect with our students, whether that's through email, phone. Some individuals are not comfortable giving their cell phones to students or home lines to students. I am definitely one of those people. And so you can always set up a Google Voice where you can call the student from a Google number and it kind of masks it from your actual personal line. Or set up some video conferences with the students through like Teams.
There's a question there. Have you seen an increase in students' problems since instructions is home-based?
Yes. So to answer that question, yes, we have seen an increase in student referrals since going into the home-based environment. Overall, since last year, we're up about 95%, I believe, total for our specific campus. But the primary thing we're seeing since moving to the home base is generally about access to basic needs. So an inability to access food, clothing, housing, internet, devices, things like that is pretty common. But then also a significant number of our students are experiencing either low, mild, or high levels of distress just with the mental exhaustion and turmoil that comes with being stuck in a pandemic and having our lives drastically altered. You know, childcare, things of that nature that just adds to general stress that students are having a real difficult time coping with right now. And so, go ahead.
One thing that I would like to elaborate when in this area, especially the concerning and talking to the student or somebody else, there are two types of exploring or feedback that you're going to ask for the student. In both of them, we want to make sure that we understand that when you're asking something of the student and the student is giving their perspective, that does not mean that it's true. We just want to understand the worldview where the student is coming. So if the student is having some challenging or accusing the faculty or other students of some behavior that may or may not be true, the fact that you're exploring for more concrete and specific samples to ask for the student does not mean that by asking them, you're confirming to that be the truth. We understand there are always two perspectives. On the other hand, when you're following up regarding a student's emotional state, you can always say, listen, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a professional in this area, but I may be able to connect you with some resources. If this is something that you would like us to do, and is there a specific challenge that you have right now? So you're letting them know that you are not a professional, that you provide some type of reference or resources, but at the same time, you're giving the student the ability to provide specific reasons of why they feel overwhelmed. So we provide a better and a specific resource to them.
Yeah, Absolutely. And I think Geronimo makes a great point too of like being, the student is going to be sharing potentially some private, confidential, or challenging information with you. And so being honest with them too about, I don't have all the answers, but let me figure out how I can get you some help is really great, because then it kind of breaks down that wall between us as the care team and the student. And so we can do outreaches one of two ways. We can do what's called high touch or low touch. Low touch is frequently what happens when a student's just not aware that a care team report was even submitted. And we call it low touch because we're not going directly to the student. We're going to filter information and resources back to the referral person, so often a faculty member, and say, hey, Professor XYZ, I hear you. Thanks for submitting this. Here are some resources that you should send to the student. And then that way the students being able and feeling comfort to disclose that information to you, they don't feel like their trust is violated in that way. Or if you just let them know like, hey, I'm going to reach out to someone and get you help, then that opens the door for more of a high touch of us going directly to the student and saying, hey, Professor XYZ let us know that XYZ is going on, so here's how we can help and here are some options. Neither are wrong, and it just kind of depends on the situation and the circumstances on what we believe will be best. And that is all based off of the rubric and the evaluation that we do during our meetings. Any questions about that?
There's a question that says, have any students reacted badly when a care team member reaches out to them? And I would say most of the time, no. There'll be a few times when the student is asking something from an academic perspective to the faculty. For example, the student was asking if they can do an incomplete because they've been having personal challenges, and the faculty immediately contacted the care team without letting the student know about it. And now the student is getting a phone call from the care team asking how they're doing personally, when the student's primary intention was to see if they can get an incomplete or not. So it's not a matter of the care team knowing, is how the student gets to know that the care team will be contacting, which is what Tim was talking about.
Yeah, I've done this for many years at 3 different institutions, and I can tell you that the term or the idea of like reacting badly is very, very, very minimal. It's like statistically, it's pretty low, and that again, and it comes down to more of like what I was talking about is that warm handoff versus a cold call. Like I think we all know, for example, how it feels to get an outreach from someone, from a call that you're kind of expecting. So, I need to talk to a financial planner, and I've reached out or talked about some recommendations and had my information passed around, and now it's expected that a financial planner is calling me. Or there's the cold call people that are like, hey, I saw you're friends with XYZ on Facebook and I want to try to see if I can help you financially plan your future. Like that's awkward when you have no connection to it prior to that one phone call. And so, like I said, us funneling resources either back through you all where the student doesn't technically know they're even on our radar, or letting the student know you're going to get them some assistance and someone will be reaching out, really breaks down those barriers. When one of those two things happens, it's almost never something that students react badly to. So definitely make sure, if you're ever concerned or confused, reach out to myself, reach out to Geronimo. We can coach you through it, but always, always, always complete that care team referral, because even if there's not any actions that need to be taken at that time, we at least want to start tracking that stuff so that we can make sure we're doing our due diligence. So disruptive behavior is the next level up. So that middle section, and it talks specifically about situations where someone may interfere or interrupt with the student's functioning or the normal functionings of the college. So maybe if someone wants to throw in the chat, what is maybe one example of something that would be like disruptive to, or be evaluated as a disruptive behavior based off of this definition? Or you can share it verbally if you would like.
Hi, this is Amy Noman. I work on South Campus,
Hi.
Science Department. Hi, I do know that in some of our science classes, we've had a student who isn't doing very well academically, try to get the class, I don't know if that, get the class against the teacher, the instructor. Tries to, I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, tries to, I can't think of the word. They don't like the teacher, so they want everyone else to not like the teacher.
Okay, so like kind of like trying to recruit people.
Yes.
Got it.
Sorry, that's the word I wanted. Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's a great example. Like trying to like recruit all of the students to almost like revolt in a way against the student.
We've had that a few times.
Yeah, that's definitely something that could interfere with another student's functioning or with the normal functions of the college. Yeah, and so think about it in the sense of like there might be intimidating or vague threats, but there is a huge difference between indirect and direct threats, what we can talk about in just a little bit. But maybe there's situations where a student is being overly demanding, whether that's via email, over phone call, during a classroom discussion, just overly demanding that something be taken care of and it be taken care of right then and there, or they're not going to be happy. That's something that might disrupt the normal operations of your classroom or the college. Students who often maybe refuse to respond to limitations in the classroom. So like, we're only going to be allowed to speak for 2 minutes during this assignment, and then a student chooses to keep going on and refuse when they're instructed to stop and move on. If there are potential signs of physical harm to self, such as cutting, we've had situations where students may post about that in like a discussion board, or if they're verbalizing thoughts of self-harm, that's something that could potentially be disruptive to that student's functioning, the functioning of others, or the classroom environment, or if they just have general outbursts in class or meetings. Some of that often just happens organically in a classroom, but it still is something that very much is likely and potentially will happen, and has happened in the online setting as well. So I want to hear maybe from one person, what do you think, what is one thing that you can do if you encounter a situation that might be disruptive? So let's say that there's a student who is just refusing to respond to the limitations of the classroom discussion, and they're kind of getting angry and amped up.
Maybe you could have to ask the student to leave.
Yeah, perfect.
The classroom.
Absolutely. I think that that's a perfect thing that can be done. I really believe, students don't know what's wrong until you tell them it's wrong, and people don't know what's expected of them until you tell them what is expected of them. And so making sure that you set those expectations early and often in your ICR, in your first review of that syllabus or ICR with the students, put a Blackboard post up about it, and then reinforce that consistently and effectively throughout the class, and asking them to stop it. And if they don't, then you can very much ask them to leave. Now, you can't kick them out and tell them that they can't come back to class until they go meet with Tim or Belinda or whoever the director is, but you're very well within your right, if a student is refusing to respond to the limitations, to ask them to leave for that singular class in that singular incident. If it's a pattern of behavior, let's brainstorm some ideas and talk about options there, but that's definitely well within your right to ask them to leave within that first time. Another thing, and something that I always recommend, is making sure that you don't just leave it there. Don't just leave it with the one-time warning or the one-time kicking them out of class. Make sure you follow up in writing with them about what were the specific concerns you had, what are your expectations moving forward. Give them a timeline on when you expect that behavior to change. Most often it'll be immediate, but sometimes it's longer. And then also let them know kind of what some of the potential consequences could be if they do not adjust and change that behavior. Please, if you feel comfortable, this might get into an area where some feel more comfortable than others, but if you feel comfortable discussing some of the reasons why they think the behavior is occurring, that can really assist in getting under the hood a little bit to determining what resources might be appropriate. And then continuing on with that, document, consult with a care team member, and make sure that you always submit that referral. Even if it's been managed, you feel like you've documented it appropriately, and the student is responding well to those limitations that were put into place, still try to get that care report submitted, because we may just document it as an FYI, an information case, so that if the student has continued outburst or continued refusal to respond to limitations, but just in different areas that maybe you don't all oversee, we're able then to connect those dots. So just because they're doing it in your class, they may be doing it at the registrar's office. They may also be doing it in their English class. And so we want to make sure we start tracking that stuff. I have sample email templates that I am happy to provide, where it's kind of just like a fill in the blank of like, I am following up with you regarding behavior XYZ. I want you to, here's the new expectations. It's kind of like a behavioral contract almost. So I'm happy to provide that if you need it. Anything that you wanted to add, Geronimo, or anyone else at this time?
I would say that the important thing to think about the care team, not so much as a place where students go to get in trouble, but it's the opposite. It's a place where we're able to follow up patterns to make sure that any behavior that may lead the student to a situation that is counterproductive to the student themselves, we want to make sure that we provide resources to de-escalate that level.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that happens sometimes. People assume that the care team also means conduct, but it doesn't. It really is about that resource identification and allocation. So the last little area that we have is when behavior typically leaves us feeling frightened or in fear of our safety or the safety of others. So like what our friend from Southeast was sharing earlier, someone threatening to come to your address or things of that nature, that's definitely something that would cause me at least, to feel frightened. And so that would definitely hit at that higher point of a threatening behavior. So there's, implies or direct threats, suicidal attempts, high risk physical confrontation or attack, displaying a weapon, or potentially referring to homicide and harming others as a solution to a problem, not just simply referring to it, but referring to it as the solution to any problem that they may be encountering. We'll go over direct and indirect threat in just a moment. But some things here that I would just say right off the bat, in terms of intervention, do not call Geronimo and myself. If someone is threatening suicide in a discussion post, or you see someone post on Facebook, some concerning behaviors that has you fearful, or if they're threatening to come and attack you in some way, shape, or form, contacting campus police and local police are going to be your best option at that point, because they're the ones that are able to provide that immediate intervention. And then definitely submit that care team report once the immediate threat to health and safety is down, because then we can talk about documentation, referrals, and implementation of other potential avenues like mandated assessments. But now if someone's emailing you, and there also needs to be a little bit of rationale and reason applied to it, in terms of if someone's emailing you and saying they're going to come to your house, but they have no way of knowing where your house is, your address isn't published, or this, that, and the other thing, and there's no way that you would have shared it with them. That's also something to take into consideration, like how realistic is this threat that's coming at me? So is there a difference between disruptive and threatening behavior? What do y'all think? See someone put in the chat that there is. Absolutely. I put this chart up here because it has some examples for in-person, but some in-person and online perspectives. But disruptive behavior is that. It is disruptive. It's uncomfortable, and at no point in time are we trying to downplay the severity of that type of situation for you, because it is impactful and it can still cause fear in some way, shape, or form. But it is important to know that we, as a care team, we have an obligation to apply an objective rubric to a situation so that we can make sure that we are consistently and equitably evaluating referrals in an unbiased manner. And so if a student is just saying like, you know, you're the worst teacher ever, I hate this class, I'm going to report you to the dean, versus I'm going to, you know, slash your tires and come to your house. Those are two distinct things, when at the end of the day, someone technically does have the right to go speak with the dean about their concerns, whether justified or not. And so making sure that we understand, and we want to definitely exemplify that we understand the emotional connection to some of these matters, and how, because we definitely experience them too in our own lives and in our own work. And there is a difference between feeling threatened and being threatened. And so that's what we're looking for when we do this objective rubric are they actually being threatened, or is there the feeling of threat? Doesn't make it okay, doesn't excuse the behavior. We're going to address it, but that's where we have to draw some distinctions in terms of lines. And again, going back to our goal is to make sure that we're providing assistance and consistent evaluation.
And Tim, one thing that I would like to add, piggybacking on what you're saying, is that it's very normal and natural, is that many times what we do is we make conclusions based on our own level of comfort emotionally, and therefore sometimes things that make us uncomfortable are the ones that we tend to put it as priority, even though the circumstance in itself is not a level of threat. To the point of sometimes most threatening and disruptive behavior starts with concerning behaviors that, because it doesn't produce an awesome level of uncomfortability, we failed to indicate it through the care team. So it escalates as students go from one boundary to another one. So the key is to make sure that we know that it's not how we feel about what the student does or thinks about us or the situation, is what is the actual behavior that is happening where we do the report and the type of report that we do. Now, keeping in mind that disruptive behavior is also, as concerning behavior, something that we want to be reported in the care team, not only threatening behavior.
Absolutely. And if we were getting, you know, everything coming in at that highest category of threatening, that would be really challenging. That means that we're missing something along the way. And so know that if there's questions, or I've had experiences in the past, and it's completely natural and understandable, where we're asking questions and faculty and staff who've referred feel as though that's us interrogating them in order to question the validity of what they're saying. And that's not the intent at all. The intent is to try and get more information to make sure that we're putting the student in the context of the risk rubric, because our actions and interventions change depending on where the student falls in the risk rubric. And the things that we can mandate of a student and not mandate of a student change based off of where they fall in the risk rubric. And so we're just trying to get good, thorough information so that we feel justified in making appropriate calls. And then that also protects you all down the road too, because it means that it was an objective review of a situation versus something that was more charged by an emotional or a personal connection. Does that make sense? So here are just some examples. Happy to debrief it. One of the questions is, did faculty or staff ever contact your office worried or fearful about guns on campus? It has happened, yes. Those are definitely situations that have come to light. I would say of the situations that have been brought to my attention here or at other institutions, the police were very, very much involved in those situations though. And so if a student is displaying firearms or weapons, that's something that the police should be made aware of, and you can let us know simultaneously, but we're definitely going to rely on the police in those interventions. Now, if a student is, I think it's also natural that some students will have an affinity for guns that's not an inappropriate affinity, or students will have a liking to guns that is not an inappropriate liking to guns. I mean, we are in Texas, and it's an open, we can still carry on campus, and so there is a fine line between displaying weapons for the purpose of a threat and then also just expressing a genuine interest in those items. So again, situations look a little different based off of the context, but we're happy to debrief those in every situation with you to help kind of figure out where we fall. At the end of the day, though, if it's enough to cause concern, please make sure that you contact the care team, because that's our goal. We want to make sure that you feel supported, our students feel supported, and we intervene. So how do you submit a report? Is you visit tccd.edu/incident report and you submit that form. The report is received by the Director of Student Conduct and Prevention Education on your campus, and then it's copied to the entire care team so that someone will see it, someone will intervene and apply some immediate intervention if needed. When you are documenting those situations, though, please make sure that you do remain objective, detailed, and fact-based. And this is where the challenge is to separate out what do we know and then what are our implications based off of our personal experiences, because the goal is to avoid the student feeling sold out. And I love acronyms. So sold out actually stands for stereotypes, opinions, labels, and diagnoses. We want to avoid all of those in the context of our reports. We don't want to apply stereotypes to a situation or our opinions. Some of those opinions come in the form of student did XYZ, but they should have done XYZ, and I had enough because they didn't do what my opinion was on how they should have reacted. Or I've submitted this report, now I believe that the care team should do XYZ. That again is also an opinion. We're going to look at our objective risk rubric to determine the best course of action and also consult with you to determine what's best to keep everyone safe. But leaving out those opinions is really safe in terms of the long run, because at the end of the day, we don't know who these reports are private, but that doesn't mean that they aren't reviewed by important people like the Vice President for Student Development Services. We don't want to apply any labels or diagnoses to the students as well. So if the student hasn't disclosed, for example, that they are depressed, I wouldn't put that in there unless they say, I am depressed, because that can lead to some assumptions when getting those reports. Narrative, please document time, date, location, verbal exchanges, quotation marks if you can, and then avoid catastrophizing. That's a word I made up. But it basically means only sharing the worst of the worst and not the best of the best as well. So don't just put the worst of the situation in the report. Make sure you put the context of everything. An example is one time we got a report that said student is suicidal. That's it. And so that obviously is of concern and causes a very significant and immediate reaction, versus the full context of the situation was the student is suicidal, but they shared that it was in the past, they've been receiving counseling for 5 years, and now they're really excited to transfer to their next university because their university also has resources that they can use. Those are two very different situations that provide and have very different responses to them. So just make sure that in the effort while being expedient, you're also being detail oriented and providing the context of the full situation. When submitting the care team report, this is a screenshot of what part of the report looks like. There's that little section that's highlighted that says nature of this report. That's where you're going to select care team. Under nature of this report, there's going to be the options for academic, Title IX, student conduct, and care team. But if you're wanting it to get to the care team, make sure you select care team there. And then here is just a screenshot of our risk rubric that we do. It's from NBITA, which is the National Behavioral Intervention Team Association. This is a nationally recognized organization that is the leading voice in violence prevention and intervention in higher education. They've also expanded into the K-12 area, sports, workplace safety, all of that. So they're very nationally recognized. They have great resources. Our teams are extensively trained in how to evaluate the situations and answer questions about where the students fall on our risk rating. Obviously, the higher they're up on this risk rating, the more intensive interventions that will be used in order to alleviate some of the concerns. But there's prompted questions here you can see, and it describes situations that help fall the student into certain categories. But if you want to explore more, you're welcome to go to nabita.org. They are a great resource that have really interesting information to help you understand a little bit. In terms of the final considerations, just remember, try to avoid normalizing, rationalizing, explaining, or ignoring unusual behavior, because it's often an indicator of something else. And we want to make sure that we intervene as a low level as possible to prevent high level issues. Every effort will be made to respect the privacy of those that are making the referrals, as well as of those whom the referrals are submitted. As a school, we do have anti-retaliation policies that protect faculty, staff, and students. So students can't really get back at faculty or staff members if they believe, for reporting to us, but know that everything will be done in order to protect the privacy of both the referrer and those that are being referred. Once we receive those reports, though, information is only shared with individuals who need to know in order to assist, review, investigate, or resolve a referral. And that's a very polite way of saying feedback to you all will be limited. In terms of, you will always get an acknowledgement that we have received your referral, but in terms of following up with you, letting you know the nuts and bolts of where a student was referred and what resources we got them to connect it to, that's just not something that's going to happen the majority of the time unless it pertains specifically to your areas of oversight. And so, for example, if the student had outburst of anger, we'll follow up and let you know that some type of educational conversation occurred or educational process to set behavioral expectations, things like that. But we're not going to go in the nuts and bolts of, oh, the student also has anger management, so we connected them with Geronimo and the counseling center, just because that's not really need to know, and the student has the right to privacy. A big piece that I love to share is that personal observations are not considered FERPA protected and are not part of the educational record. So what you see, what you hear, what a student says to you, whether in a discussion post or in an email, that is a personal observation. That is not a FERPA protected record, like their registration history, their financial aid status, their student conduct record. And so know that you're okay sharing that with us. But at the end of the day, again, that educational need to know really alleviates any concerns that any individual should have about sharing information with the team. I'll share these slides afterwards, but just know that at the end of the day, the whole goal is to end the behavior before it happens as best as possible. So we got to refer early and talk early and give ourselves permissions to act so that we can make sure that we are connecting the students early to resources.
Tim, we have a question.
Did faculty or staff ever contact your office worried or fearful about guns on campus? That's the last one I'm seeing.
No, there's one raised hand.
Oh.
Yeah, I had a question.
Yes.
Is it advisable to verbally tell the student that I'm going to refer you to the care team, or how do you want us to handle that when it gets to the situation that they really need help beyond the faculty?
Yeah. I think, it's always, I personally believe that in most situations, it's advisable to let them know that you're referring them, because the majority of the time you're referring them to connect them with resources and get them help. And so looking at it from a care aspect of, I don't know many people that get mad when someone cares about them. Now, if it's more of a disruption or a threatening behavior, there's probably more cause for pause in terms of letting the student know, like, hey, you threatened to shoot me, so I'm also going to let the care team know. Like that doesn't necessarily seem as appropriate. Geronimo, do you want to provide any context there?
Yes, I would say also that we have to put it in a pragmatical mode. For example, let's say that a student don't turn in the assignment and the email from the student says, sorry for not turning the assignment, will you give me some extra days? I've been having a lot of problems with my children and parenting skills with my ex-husband, right? You can tell the student that they're going through difficult times, that you understand, you will make the decision academically if you want to give them extra time or not, but it doesn't take away from the coping skills that the student requires. And there are two ways to address this. One is that you can say, this is out of my scope, but I do understand how important this is for you, so I'm going to contact the care team so they contact you with resources. Or we can provide you contact us, and the care team will provide you some resources that you can provide to the student as well. What we want to make sure is that unless it's not an immediate threat at risk or somebody else or the student's life themselves, we want to make sure that the student is aware of who is aware of their personal issues instead of getting a phone call from somebody that did not expect, asking them that, telling them that we're going to help them. That gives them a sense of control for them and doesn't escalate the situation.
Well, thank you.
You're very welcome. So, NABITA, which is the National Association, they host this thing called Talking Bits, and it's little podcast Zoom sessions. They're open to the public that you can join in if you want to learn more about. They happen typically about once a month. It's a new initiative, so that's there.
And
so we're gonna.
One more question: does the care team work with students only, or also faculty or staff?
So it is a student referral process right now. So we work specifically with individuals who are registered students. And so if there are concerns about faculty or staff, that would be a referral to Human Resources and the Employee Assistance Program.
That is correct.
So let's practice. I know that we're close to time, but I do want to just do at least one of these. So if you want to tell me a little bit about, read this scenario and then tell me what behavior you think this student falls into and what would maybe be one action that you could take. So it says, Taylor is mad about a grade and emails you. Part of his email says, you are the worst teacher I've ever had. I'm not doing any more of this SHIT. You're a dumb ASS and that deserves to be fired. Where would you put that? Concerning, disruptive, or threatening behavior?
I would say threatening.
Okay, why?
Because they want to fire you.
Okay. Others?
It doesn't sound like a threat to me.
Yeah. And so when thinking about a threat, one important thing to remember in the distinction between maybe something that would potentially be considered disruptive versus a threat is time, place, and manner. So is the individual identifying a time, place, and manner in which they're going to act upon their threat, or is it just more of verbiage? And so for this particular situation, students pissed, rightfully so, maybe not rightfully so, and they may have the perspective and opinion that you deserve to be fired, but at the end of the day, do they have any control over that? Probably not. Even if the student in this situation had said, I want to go talk with the dean, it probably would still fall within that disruption, because I think about threats are not every time, but oftentimes the distinction between threats and disruption are things that a student may have a right to do versus non-right to do. So like, no one has a right to say, I'm going to hurt you and your family or your belongings or things of that nature. But they do have a reasonable, oftentimes, right to go meet with the dean to express their concerns. That's just how it happens. Now, no one has a right to disrupt the educational environment either. And so those are some contexts that we have to put into place. But when looking at something between disruption or a threat, we're often looking for those times, place, and manners. So did they name a specific target? Did they name a specific means in which they were going to execute that harm and a specific time in which it would occur? So I know we're out of time. There's a couple other examples, but at the end of the day, we're here for you. If you have any questions, please let us know. I will drop into the chat for you all a little feedback form. So if you don't mind just completing that to go over some of the different, it's an evaluation form over Connections Week and some of the different sessions that we had today. And so we appreciate your attendance. I'll stay on for a couple minutes after Geronimo stops the recording and can answer any last minute questions for you all. But thank you so much. We appreciate your time.